Okay, we've got a lot of really great music dropping today, and I feel as if this one might get missed, so I'm doing my best to elevate these guys to the public awareness, and this is kind of my hope that it will be seen by a few more people. So with that being said, let's dive in. Hopium by Kingcrow. So Kingcrow is an Italian progressive metal band getting their start in the late 90s and then putting out their first record back in 2001. And this is their 8th studio record. And the first one from them that I've heard after doing a little bit of research, it looks like each album gets progressively better in terms of, I guess, critical analysis and ratings on different websites. So it seems as if like they're getting better and better and better. And this album is an absolute treat. You know, I don't want to bury the lead too much, as I mentioned at the very beginning. This album, I think, is one of the better additions to the prog metal landscape that we've gotten. I want to get my only real criticism about this album out of the way first before I dive into what I love about this record. And that is, it is a Leprous clone band and a Leprous clone album. You know, the keyboards, the guitars, the singing styles, the rhythm sections, it's all basically cut and paste Leprous, especially between their bilateralis Cole and Congregation moments. You know, like a lot of these tracks could fit very, very well on any of those albums, and I don't think anybody would have batted an eye or said that it was out of place. But that also leads me to one of the better things about this album, because I feel as if with a lot of prog music, they're starting to lean very, very heavily on contemporary influences. You know, like No Spoon and Elmo were definitely leaning on Haken, Dream Theater, Tesseract, and Between the Buried and Me very heavily. And I feel like this album is doing that same thing, but I don't mind it because the music that it's found on there is some of the best Leprous music that I've heard since The Congregation. Yeah, let's talk about the actual music that's found on here. Let's talk about, you know, I want to talk about these guys for themselves and not just comparing them to Leprous, even though that's going to be very hard. The one thing right off the get-go is how punchy and how immediate these tracks are. Most of these tracks range in the 5, 6, sometimes 4-minute mark. They're very quick, they're very punchy, they're very in-your-face, they're very immediate. You know, I think there's only like one song that's kind of touching the 7-minute mark, which is The White Rabbit's Hole, the 6th track at almost 7 minutes, but everything else is just very quick, very punchy, and if you've listened to Leprous, you know exactly what you're going to get. It's not quite gent, but we've got that very quick, very syncopated guitar licks. We've got some really interesting and meaty chugging going on. There's a lot of overlays on the keyboards and the synths. You know, there's a lot of programming found within this as well, without getting too distracting, without it being just a noise rock or an electronica or like a metal dubstep kind of a wannabe record. What I really enjoy is how they're able to command so much with such a limited amount of time. Like the first track of Kingzugi and the second track of Glitch go by immediately and very quickly. It's like they're here and then they're gone, and they're very prominent, they're very in your face, they're very immediate. And then we get into Parallel Lines, the third track, which allows itself to kind of grow a little bit more. It's one of the longer tracks at 6 minutes and 45 seconds, and I really love how, much like The Flood on Congregation, they really just root themselves into a very constrained box that allows it then to be tethered around and circle around that kind of center. And I really enjoy that. You know, the end play out of this kind of chugging, like dun 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 dun. It's a great play out. I love the ending. I love the chugging of the guitars. It's very aggressive. It's very meaty without it being too sharp, without it being too aggressive. I know that this type of music can get a little bit, you know, rough around the edges, and I like the fact that they kind of keep a very clean polish on there. Another thing that I love about these guys is that they're able to craft a somber track very well as well. The New Moon Harvest, track 4, is a little bit of a come down, which is kind of what we need after those first 3 tracks being so immediate and so aggressive, but it's a somber track without it ever getting boring or melodramatic. You know, it keeps that edge, it keeps that sharpness to it without being brutal, and I really appreciate that. The next track of The Losing Game kind of reminds me of some of the things that Porcupine Tree was playing with in the Dead Wing or Fear of a Blank Planet, in terms of like the programming and the synthesizers. You know, you've got this root of this heavy rock metal aspect, but there's a lot of very interesting soundscapes that are being played on the synth, and I really appreciate that, and you know, it grows into something very special. When we come into the 6th track of the White Rabbit's Hole, again, this is the longer one, and I appreciate that this track has a little bit more ebb and flow. You know, it's not just that punchy immediateness, it showcases the band stretching their legs a little bit, you know, going off into new and exciting areas without it just being a kind of a one and done, quick, syncopated romp. You know, there's a little bit more to it. There's a little bit more nooks and crannies to kind of explore within it. I think if you're looking for the most leprous track, you got to check out Night Drive, the 7th track. This has that really somber building, like this is the Melina stylings. You can hear Inar's vocals influencing here. Unfortunately, I will say the lead singer doesn't quite have the prowess, the powerhouse, and the range that Inar has from Leprous, but he tries. You know, at the end of the track, we have those whoa, whoa moments on there that's very, you know, akin to the Melina style of Leprous on there. I want to just quickly touch upon Vicious Circles, because I feel as if Vicious Circle is like the one kind of sore thumb of this record. You know, it doesn't quite add a whole lot. I feel as if they could have nixed this track, because I feel like for an album that's 53 minutes, I'm always kind of looking for something to trim. You know, I want, like, 53 minutes is a good length, but I'm always like, is there something that could trim? And Vicious Circles, I feel, doesn't really add anything new or anything exciting to the album. Though, if I were to really cut something, the last track of Come Through is kind of just the ballad. You know, it's very somber. It's much more approachable, where everything else was much more doom and gloom and minor key, and you know, it kind of had the sharp edge to it. Come Through is the kind of clouds parting and the sun coming out, and I'm not quite sure if this is the ending that I would have appreciated on an album like this. I would have liked a little bit more of a dirge, a little bit more of a somber letdown, rather than this little bit more of an optimistic. It just feels out of place. Now, the song preceding it and the one following Vicious Circles is Hopium, the title track. And it very easily is my favorite track off the album, not just because it's the longest at 8 minutes and 22 seconds. I know that I mentioned that, you know, some of the tracks are almost 7 minutes, but this is the longest track at 8 minutes and 22 seconds. And it really allows the album to grow and to blossom. You know, there's a lot of builds, there's a lot of payoffs, and they're doing what I love that Leprous was doing, finding the root and building up the track, you know, allowing the track to blossom, allowing the track to progress as they go from one movement to another movement to another movement. And when we get to the end, I feel like I've been on a brilliant and beautiful walk through the evening, and I've passed all these really amazing sceneries. So yeah, if only this track was the ending of this album, I think it would have ended on such a highlight. So, in the end, Hopium from Kingcrow was one that really surprised me. This was one of the better styles of progressive metal within this, you know, little niche genre that I've heard for a very long time. I would almost recommend listening to this guy first before listening to the new Leprous album, because I've heard both. Kind of like this one a little bit more. So, yeah, my final rating for this guy is Hopium from Kingcrow is one that I would absolutely pick up in physical format. This is one you'll want to have in your collection, especially if you love to collect Leprous albums or albums kind of circling this style of metal. I highly recommend it to any fan of Leprous. But do go in knowing that this is basically just a Leprous clone record, you know, and I tried my best not to continuously bring out their name throughout this review, because I want to keep the review to Kingcrow, but it's kind of hard when we're dealing with the music that we're dealing with. Anyway, those are my thoughts. What are your thoughts about this album? It's out today, so please go and listen to it. This one gets the note seal of approval. This one gets the run, don't walk to listen to it. So yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Go and listen to it, and once you have, come on back and let me know if you loved it, if you hated it, by commenting down below. That's where I'm going to leave you guys today. So, thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.